Now we'll begin. Our first speaker is Aaron Gabriel from Cornell. He's going to talk about cropping and water quality strategies. So welcome, Aaron. Please take it away.
Okay. Okay, can you see that? I'll start from the front, I think. Can you
Yes,
hear
we
me
can.
okay? So my name is Aaron Gabriel. I work with Cornell Cooperative Extension. Ashley and I are part of a 6-county program in the Hudson Valley called the Capital Area Ag and Hort Program. I am the agronomy educator. I think maybe everyone knows what cooperative extension is, but just briefly, every state has a land grant university, which includes an agricultural college. So ours is Cornell, and the research and education from the university, it's our job in extension to bring it out to the community. So that's what we do. We do education. We have electronic and printed newsletters. We do workshops and field days. We do field research. Lately. We've been doing quite a few Zoom meetings. So if it's education, we're all about it. So that's what we do. I'm going to talk a little bit about soil health and water quality. There's a very intimate relationship between, water and soil. I've listed just 4 different interactions. When it rains, we want that water to infiltrate into the soil so our crops can get to it later on. Um, we don't really want erosion or runoff. Leaching is a fairly natural process, but we don't want to be losing nutrients or leaching pathogens into our groundwater. And then, soils have water holding capacity and there's movement of water in the soil. So like when we have a dry spell like the summer, we want water to move from the subsoil up to our crop roots. And then when we talk about soil health, we divide it into 3 areas. Our chemical or the nutrient status of the soil is pretty easy to manage. We can send a soil sample off to a lab, we get a nice report, and then we can pretty much buy whatever we need to put our nutrients or chemical status of the soil back in balance. But when we get to the physical aspects of soil, our porosity and the texture, if it's crumbly or blocky, that's a little bit harder to manage. We need porosity in the soil for air and water to move through and get to the roots. So, being patient and not going on our fields with equipment or with tillage equipment when it's wet is kind of a hard thing to do sometimes when you're trying to get work done. Then the biological aspects of soil, there's a lot of things living in soil. Uh, some of you may remember Jacques Cousteau, who used to have that show about all the life under the ocean, and the soil's kind of the same. There's a whole world of life in the soil, from bacteria up to worms and rodents and bugs and fungi. So the main message on soil health is to feed the soil because all these organisms need to eat something. Ooh, let me go back up. So the message here also is that, healthy soils make for a healthy relationship between soil and water. When I show this slide in various presentations about soil health, I ask, which soil do you want to have in your garden or out in your field? And even young kids know which soil looks better and is more healthy. And so I think intrinsically, we know what good soil at least looks like. And just getting back to those 3 aspects of soil health, manure provides a lot of good nutrients for our plants. And we want those nutrients to stay in the field. If it runs off or if it leaches too far, it's going to be causing a problem for someone. This here is a drag line system, so manure is being pumped into this flexible hose to the applicator, and that's incorporating the manure into the soil so it doesn't run off and it doesn't leach easily. When we look at the physical aspects of our soil, this you can see the handle of my shovel right here, the stem of the shovel and the tip. This is just a soil full of shovel full of soil, and you can see these compacted layers. And if you're a dairy farmer, you've seen this somewhere else on your farm, in your bunk silo, because we run over the silage in the bunk, for an hour or so trying to pack it down. And when that silage comes out of the bunk, it comes out in plates and layers, just like this compacted soil from being run over when the soil's too wet. This is a root ball of sorghum, and you can see how those roots are granulating the soil, and that's what we want. We want nice granulated soil. When we think about organic matter in the soil, this is a little demonstration where you put a clump of soil into a beaker and it's just sitting on a piece of hardware cloth here. This is a Hudson silt loam from a pasture, so it's got a good amount of organic matter and it's holding together. This is a clump of Hudson silt loam from across the street in some row crops, not quite as much organic matter. And you can see that it just falls apart in the water without any agitation or anything. And this is some blue clay from about 3 or 4 feet down. When you put it in water, it actually falls apart really quickly. So the soil organisms kind of bind our soil aggregates together and basically make them strong and help sustain that porosity in our soil and give our soil structure some strength. These are some pictures from Landview Farm in White Creek. Cover crops are a great way to protect the soil and improve water quality. The message from this slide is that there's a lot of different ways of planting cover crops. The more management you put into it, the better the results are going to be. So if you can drill them with the seed drill, you'll have you'll have the best results and the most probable success. This seed was mixed with the manure and a slurry spreader and just spread out with the manure. I was looking at this slide. This said it was run over with a disc harrow, but the corn stalks don't give evidence of that. So maybe I mislabeled the slide, but this is another method of seeding and just broadcasting the seed. You can do that with rye and I guess triticale. I've seen it done with wheat without success, but rye is probably our most forgiving and hardy cover crop. And so sometimes if the conditions are okay or good, you can actually just broadcast rye without any incorporation and still get a stand. I don't recommend that, but you can do it. So we have some new equipment to seed cover crops into corn at like V6 or before it gets too tall. So these cover crops in this photo in the upper left and on the right were seeded back in June. And that's annual ryegrass, some clover, and a tillage radish. Most of which will winter kill, except annual ryegrass will actually survive the winter depending on its variety. No-till planting, either with a grain drill or with your corn planter, is another great way to save time, energy, and conserve the soil and improve water quality. In most of our counties in the area, you can rent a no-till drill. This cover crop was planted and then it winter killed. Oats, winter pea, and tillage radish. A couple of the winter pea overwintered. Then the next spring early, some oats were drilled directly into it. And that was actually a great year for growing oats back in 2019. This is a Washington County farm. Tile drainage is a great way to improve water infiltration into our soil. You do have to manage it because if our nutrient levels are too high, putting on too much manure or fertilizer, excess nutrients, dissolved nutrients, which are very reactive, can come out of the tile outlet. And when they get into a water body, they can cause quite a bit of trouble. So tile drainage is great if you manage it properly. And that's all I have. Wanted to just hopefully keep it short and sweet. So I don't know if you want to take questions now or we have a discussion at the end. Either way.
We'll take questions now using the chat function. Anyone have questions for Aaron at this point? Please write them down. Okay, Aaron, I guess you covered everything
Right.
well enough that that folks understood.
Very good. Thank you.
So if you do have other questions, if you do indeed, oh, there is one from Roxanne Davis asking, who does tile drainage in this area, Aaron?
Well, first, if you're going to have someone do tile drainage for you, be sure they do have experience doing it. That tile plow that you saw in the photo, there's a couple of those in the region. You'd have to, I guess, since this is being recorded, I don't think I want to give out names of folks because sometimes farms will do custom tiling and sometimes they won't. There is a company up in Vermont called Redline. They do custom tile drainage, but they're not going to come down here unless you have, 50 or 100 acres to do. There's also a person, I forget their name, down in Dutchess County that will come north and do some tile drainage. And then there's, like I said, there's folks around that own backhoes that can do it. You just have to find those people that have the experience. And actually, soil and water would probably be better to ask them who does it. But if you want specific names, just contact me.
Okay, any other questions for Aaron? Okay, we will now move on to Ashley Pierce, also from Cornell, and she's going to talk about livestock and water quality strategies. And she has a PowerPoint presentation that I see that Jim has already put up there. So thanks for that. And we'll move on to Ashley now.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I am also on the Capital Area Ag and Hort program team with Aaron. And so I'm going to talk a little about extension and the programs that we're currently offering, and then other things that we could be offering in the future. And as they mentioned, I am the livestock specialist for our team. And the cool thing about extension, as Aaron mentioned, is that we're part of a land grant institution, Cornell University, and each state has a land grant. And so not only do we have a lot of other educators in our state that we network with, but also outside of the state. So I often tell people that I might not know the answer immediately, but we have such a great network that if there's something that we don't know, we can connect with other farmers, other educators, and get you a good answer. So if you have any livestock needs, definitely contact me. I'll have my info here at the end. And as Aaron mentioned, he's an agronomist. We have 2 business educators, and we have a horticulture educator. So we try to cover a really wide variety. And in addition to that, outside of our team, also we have people at the county level that are able to do some work as well that are great with maybe your backyard gardens. We have fruit and vegetable specialists. So we really cover a gamut of different topics within agriculture. So besides just agronomy and livestock, there's a lot of other things if your interest falls outside of those or your needs. So yes, if you could advance the slide for me, please. Great. So yeah, so as I mentioned, my role is all non-dairy livestock, and that doesn't mean that we don't cover dairy. We focus more on the business aspects of that and the agronomy side. But I work with sheep, goats, pigs, poultry, beef cattle, exotics like rabbits, camelids, so llamas, alpacas, really kind of any non-dairy livestock. And I'm branching into a little bit of dairy as well, and I'll go into that. So although I know you're just in Rensselaer County, we do cover a 6-county region. So we cover Albany, Schenectady, Washington, Rensselaer, Columbia, and Greene counties. And so if you know anyone outside of that area or outside of your county that needs assistance, definitely reach out, have them reach out to us. And we also help farms of all sizes. So if you're a beginning farmer, we'd love to help you. If you're a large farm, we definitely would love to help as well. So yeah, and I just have a little picture of me here with my rabbit. I have a small farm at home too, and I have some sheep and background in animal science. So, definitely understand some of the things that you're going through as farmers. And so I think the things that we see most often too with livestock, I often pair up with Erin, and some of the things you might see are overstocking. We have too many animals in one spot, and that can contribute to overgrazing. The grass there and other plants that are growing could become grazed, they're too short. We could then get compaction from that and runoff. As Erin mentioned, that too much manure could be creating a situation where we have excess nutrients, and obviously that creating some real water quality issues. So if you could advance the slide for me, please. Great. So some of the things that we're working on current programming, and it really, I think, at this time, there's not specific water quality programming that we're focusing on, but a lot of it really covers water quality in that we're focusing on, the general health of the environment. So one program I recently started is the Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship Program, and that's actually a nationwide program, and it's really focusing on helping there to be new farmers that are understanding how to graze dairy cattle. And so we have one farm, and he's a little out of maybe your direct watershed, but let's see, he's in Hoosick Falls area, and he's a master, and he's training new farmers that are going to be grazing in a really, environmentally friendly way. So that's one thing that has been really great. And grazing's really been a focus as well. And so that's been an area that we can really help with water quality too. And so I'm going to skip down to the third bullet where I talk about holistic management. And a couple of years ago, I started working with, it's called the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, SARE. And in that, I learned about holistic management, and it was a train the trainer program. So I was able to learn about holistic management and whole farm planning and bring that to farmers in our area. So I have some farmers in Rensselaer County that I'm working on this with. And in that, we're talking about the triple bottom line. So really being aware of your farming practices and how they're affecting people, planet, and profits, because they all really are connected together. And in that, the farmers that I'm working with in Rensselaer County, these livestock farmers, are really taking a lot of effort to plan their grazing. And again, that's to avoid any of this overstocking, overgrazing, because, as Erin mentioned, if we, if we're grazing correctly, we're going to have better soil health, which in turn will help maintain water quality. And so some of these grazing programs and grazing plans that we can do, it'd be something that I could potentially partner with Erin with, or work, in this whole farm planning holistic management framework. And the farmers are, maybe taking a map of their farm and seeing, exactly how they want to graze, how they want to manage, and, planning that often this time of year, early spring, before things start growing. So the farmers that we've been working with have been doing a really fantastic job planning that grazing to avoid any of these overstocking kind of issues. And we're definitely happy to help, create these plans as well. To go back up, we're just starting to do some online classes as well with everything that's happening with COVID. We've done a lot of webinars, and an example again of kind of some programming that we're offering is a spring and fall grazing meeting. We have a spring turnout, fall roundup, and then, others throughout the year as needed. And also our annual winter green up, and it's going to be our 13th year this year, which is exciting. And again, just focusing on really trying to encourage and educate around that grazing management. And we don't have to focus, there's definitely livestock producers that aren't grazing, and we're really glad to work with them and happy to help as well. And again, that might be an area where I team up with Erin, and he would do some more agronomy work with those farmers. If they're having animals in confinement, and there's going to be maybe different challenges there to make sure that everything is just done in a way that's going to be the most environmentally friendly. So I think there's been some really good, trying to think of the right word, but yeah, just really good programming that's been able to happen to help, just focus on soil health and all of these kind of good things related to livestock and agronomy. All right, have you advance the slide, please? And so again, as Erin mentioned, we can offer a lot of different things. So we can do one-on-one farm visits or consultations. That can mean, this time of year is difficult, and it's not so much the season, I shouldn't say time of year, but with COVID, it's difficult to maybe be on farm. We can do it, but we have to really be cautious. But in general, we are able to do farm visits as long as we're having social distancing and everything. We could also do things over the phone. I did a great visit with a guy this year, and we did that. Let's see, it wasn't Skype, but it was another kind of video platform. So he could actually just walk around and show me everything on his farm, and we could talk, and it was a way that he felt more comfortable, instead of having someone on the farm. So I think that that's a great thing that we could do as well. We do a lot of classes, workshops, and seminars. And, at the conclusion of a lot of classes, we're always giving out evaluations and trying to see how we can improve our programming. And one thing we always want to know is what kind of classes people are looking for. So we're always taking input there as well. So, especially, we want, my best program ideas have always come from farmers. I try to get a pulse on what's happening and understand what people need, but really those direct, like, I need this program have really been the best ones. So if any of the farmers you work with, or if there's farmers on this call that have needs, we would love to hear that and be able to try to provide more direct assistance to you, whether that's one-on-one or classes. We also do a lot of really great facilitation of education with guest speakers and educators. And I bring that up because we have the Winter Green Up coming up, and we have a speaker coming, virtually to us from Utah, another from West Virginia, and then another from the southern part of the Hudson Valley. And so they are going to, again, be talking about grazing, because it's a grass-fed conference. But again, we can, go in a lot of different directions with them. Again, grazing planning. And then we're able to help. I do a lot of work with just livestock management in general. So I just had a guy getting started with beef cattle and trying to come up with nutrition plans. And again, as Erin mentioned, with the nutrient loads in soils, that's something, I'm not a nutritionist per se. We're generalists. Within the animal science, I'm a generalist. So I'm not a nutritionist, but I can help help the farmer come up with some basic rations, and again, troubleshoot with other educators or specialists at Cornell to do that as well. And I bring up the nutrient load because having a correct ration can help reduce some of that excess nutrient load. Again, breeding, housing, husbandry, all these things can really affect the water quality, because if I'm, feeding a diet that's too high in, the beyond what the animals are needing, and they're excreting those excess nutrients, if the housing is not really correct and there's excess manure there, or it's close to water and it's able to run off, or they're just not housing the animals correctly. And I have husbandry there as a general term for kind of the whole thing. But again, we do a lot of visits and discussions with people. And in that, so if to go back to the example of pretend they're not housed quite in an ideal way, we can go there and provide education. We're not there to to police anyone or force them to make any changes, but just to try to help them have the best farm that they can, and make changes that will help them be more profitable, help their land, help our broader community. So we're definitely happy to help in any of those areas. All right, and I'll advance to my last slide, please. And so this is my contact info, and if there's anything I can ever do for you, please feel free to reach out at any point. My cell phone number is on top, and then below that is my email. We have a weekly e-news where you could see all the events that we are having. There's also a lot of opportunities in our e-news. So I know, like today, I just got an example. Farm Bureau is hosting their annual meeting, and it's going to be totally free this year. So we're going to put that in the e-news. Like, there's a lot of really great opportunities, sometimes grant opportunities, things that might be for sale. So it's a pretty cool weekly newsletter, and it only comes out once a week. So we won't bombard you. So if that's something you would like, so more about what we're up to, and let us know what you need, you could shoot me either text, give me a call, an email. And again, we're here to meet your needs and try to help you have the best farm that you can. And so please feel free to reach out to us at any time. And I think that's the end of my prepared presentation, and I would love to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Any questions for her? We really appreciate that presentation. Boy, you have a lot of good stuff going on out there. So it'd be great if people take advantage of it. Any questions for Ashley? Okay, Dan wanted to know, Ashley, how do people sign up for the e-news?
Oh, if you send me an email, I can connect you with Tove, our administrative person, and she can get you set up. So yeah, if you, shoot me an email, that would be the best.
And Anna wants to know, does Cornell offer any free online courses?
They vary. Sometimes they're free and sometimes we charge. It really depends on our expenses, honestly. So there are a lot of free ones, but I'll give you an example. So our winter green up, our speaker from Utah, his fee is like $500. And so we do have to charge a little bit of a fee to recoup some of that and be able to pay him his speaker cost. But we try to keep the prices as low as we possibly can. But we do have a lot of free things too. And in the newsletter, if it seems like appropriate to our area, we include it. So I know like just today, the I think it's the New York State Beef Producers Association, or it might be the Beef Checkoff. One of them just put out a series of beef meetings, and those are free through their organization, but we'll still list them in our weekly e-news. And so even if it's not free through us, we're trying to promote all of the agricultural education that we can and just let you know everything that's available. And so you'll find a lot of free education on there.
Okay, well, super. Thank you again, Ashley. That was very
Yeah,
informative.
thank you.
And as I said, you have a lot of great stuff going on there. Hope people take advantage of it. Okay, now we're going to move on to Diana Stanton. Diana works for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, part of the Department of Agriculture, and she's going to share programs that they have for the farm community.
Let me see, make sure I get set up properly. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can. You're there.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Diana Stanton. As John said, I'm the district conservationist for the Natural Resources Conservation Service out of Troy. And I cover multiple counties, but in particular, I'm located in Rensselaer County. So in case there are folks on here who have not heard of NRCS before, we are a federal agency within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. People may know us as the old Soil Conservation Service or even Soil Erosion Service, but because we brought into not just soils and to all, many natural resources, we're now the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So our role is to provide farmers and forest landowners with financial and technical assistance to voluntarily put conservation on the ground, not only helping the environment, but ag operations too. So all of our programs are voluntary, and essentially our old mission was helping you put conservation on the ground. So in general, what we're really known as is conservation planners. And actually my presentation kind of abuts up with Ashley's and Aaron's pretty well. Ashley and Aaron are more of the educators, and my part of kind of this bigger ag picture is to help producers do some implementation of some of these conservation practices or planning. So first, you would start working with NRCS to plan your projects, identify your objectives, and NRCS can provide technical assistance, meaning staff, both biologists, conservationists, agronomy, engineering, whatnot, help develop a conservation plan. And then we also offer programs that provide financial assistance or funding to help implement conservation practices. So I want to talk about a couple of common practices that we recommend that I feel are kind of the best ways to improve water quality. And Aaron touched on a lot of them already. And, you know, as Aaron said, soil health, having healthy soils will give you healthy soil and water. Everything works together. So the first thing I want to talk about is really just basic soil testing, nutrient budgeting, and manure management. So one of the newer aspects that we call is the 4 R's. So if you're putting on fertilizers or putting on manure, putting it in the right source, the right rate, right time, and the right place. So essentially, you know, what's your source of fertilizer? You know, not putting on more than what's needed that the crop's going to use, or not, at least not excessively putting on more, because then there's more potential for runoff into water courses. Again, the right rate. So, you know, what's your quantity of the type of fertilizer? And the biggest crop nutrients that are needed are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So really kind of balancing the rate of how you're applying those nutrients to your land. Third is the right timing. Obviously, a actively growing plant or crop is going to be using more nutrients than a crop that's, you know, dead or been harvested already. So the closer you can apply nutrients to when the crop is going to use them, the less likely those nutrients would be lost out of the field. And then lastly, the right place. As Aaron alluded to, you know, having the nutrients on the field, less potential for those nutrients to run off into a stream or even just into other land, you know, because it's not only the right thing to do for water quality, but it's also, you know, the bang for the buck. You don't want to spend money on fertilizer and lose those benefits and, you know, have lost that funding that you've put towards that enhancement through the fertilizer. Next thing I'm going to talk about, just in general, more of the livestock or stream side of things. So easy ways you can help improve to reduce nutrients, pathogens, and sediments in surface water, fencing livestock out of streams or wetlands, and you can even plant or seed stream buffers if needed. Honestly, just maintaining that distance between the stream and say where your pasture starts or where your crop field starts helps to keep those nutrients and those things at a distance from the stream. It also provides vegetation between the stream and the actively growing crop. So some of this grass, and you'll see in this picture these are actually tree tubes. They're actually planting a tree buffer here. The goal is that these plants and active vegetation between the stream and the active crop field or pasture will help to uptake any nutrients that get removed from the field. And then there's also stream bank erosion protection. With all of these heavier storms that we've had over the last several years, stream erosion it's a very costly practice to install, but it can have some important benefits to keep land in place. Next, I'm going to talk about just kind of some general crops and some strategies that producers can use within their cropping systems. So the first one is a conservation crop rotation. And honestly, a lot of people in New York and in the Tomhannock Reservoir already do great jobs with conservation crop rotations. You'll see fields where, say, they grow corn for 2 to 3 years, and then they might seed it down to a hay crop for 3 to 4 years. Rotations like that not only help to reduce pest problems, but also help to reduce erosion rates. And the more you can reduce erosion rates, the more that you can keep nutrients and sediment reduced from hitting surface waters. Aaron talked about cover crops already. I threw in, actually, as Aaron was talking about it, this picture on the right is actually a tillage radish. And it was grown here in Rensselaer County, and it only took 10 weeks to grow. It was seeded in August, and I think I pulled it in October or November. And the farm is using this actually as like a natural tillage, like trying to create those macropores through the soil to get more infiltration and to try to improve their soil health. And because what happens is something with a big taproot like this, it will grow so deep, and then it'll die off over the winter. And as that material and that plant dies off, it'll keep that space where the water can still now run through that pore space that's been created in the soil and improve infiltration. Also, just high residue crops, having hayland, having your ground really, the more residue or cover you can have on your ground, the more it can reduce nutrients or sediments running off your field into and making its way to a water course like the Tomhannock. I wanted to throw in a plug. Aaron alluded to this, but the Rensselaer County Soil and Water Conservation District I work very closely with. They're not able to be on tonight, but I did want to throw in a plug that they do have a no-till drill that's available for rental. And this is their 2020 flyer, so don't quote me on the $12 per acre. I'm not sure if that rate's going to be changing for 2021, but this no-till drill is available to rent to any landowner in Rensselaer County. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Larry Eckhart. I asked Larry if he could join us tonight to just talk about some of the conservation practices they do on their farm. Larry's from the Kinderhook Creek Farm in Stephentown, New York. They have an extensive list of crops that they grow, and they also have a small beef herd. So I'm gonna let Larry talk about kind of how he's used different conservation practices and how he's managed to do things well while also producing a crop.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Yes, we can.
I don't have a slide presentation, but Diana did and Aaron and Ashley are all people we've worked with in the past here at Kinderhook Creek Farm. Just so you know, we have my family, my 2 sons, my wife and I, along with some hired hands, farm about 1,300 acres in Stephentown, New Lebanon, and Columbia County, even a little bit into Berkshire County, into Cherry Plain. So we're fairly spread out, and we're also fairly diverse. As Diana mentioned, we do have a small herd of 70 head of Angus beef cattle. And our major commodity here at the farm is fresh market sweet corn and other vegetable crops, along with grain, hay, small grains like wheat, rye, oats, and triticale. And I guess we're most famous for some of that sweet corn that many of you probably enjoy during the summer months. But Aaron mentioned a bunch of things and showed some slides of some of the conservation practices that would be appropriate for a watershed like the Tom Hannock. We're in both the Kinderhook watershed, which is part of the lower Hudson Valley watershed. We also farm some in the Wyomanac watershed in New Lebanon. So we're, you know, we really look at watershed as being one of the major things we look at. For those people who would be in the Tom Hannock, the watershed is extremely important. And where does this stuff go that, you know, that we're putting on the fields, whether it be manure, you know, from the livestock, whether it be commercial fertilizers, or even, you know, when you look at the erosion that may come about from some type of tillage practice. Interestingly enough, on our farm, we haven't done any tillage using a moldboard plow. Well, Matthew, my oldest son, is 33 years old, and he's never driven a tractor with a moldboard plow hooked to it. So, and he asks me sometimes, what's that thing over there that we haven't used and since I've been able to walk? And so we haven't done any moldboard plowing in at least 30 years. We have for the neighbors when they've asked us to, and I've had to be the one to do it because I remember how to do it. But we also use a lot of cover crops and field rotations. Those covers that Aaron was presenting in his slide, nearly all of those. For many years, we rented the no-till drill from Rensselaer County to the point where they were begging us all the time to let somebody else use it, and we would get it cleaned up and sent back and fixed up so it would actually work. But we eventually bought our own no-till drill, and this year I think we put somewhere around 590 acres on our no-till drill, and that's putting in cover crops and some small grain crops like spring oats. Ashley and Diana and Aaron probably remember that our farm was one of the first in the state to put on a soil health workshop. I think that was 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It's going back a ways, but we've been really, you know, trying to emphasize soil health and all the different no-till and minimum till methods that were available to us at the time. And as we go forward, adopting more and more of those types of tillage or no tillage practices, again, with a real focus on water quality and, you know, where is all this going to end up? I'm watching my timer here. So those of you that, you know, that I've got it going on my cell phone. So there was a question about tile drainage, and I found that kind of interesting. Here in Rensselaer County, in this general geographic area with the soil types we have, not a lot of tile drainage is put in a systematic way in a field. Maybe up in some of the fields in Washington County where Aaron hails from, there are some soils and fields that they would do that in. But here in our general location, tile drainage is put in to eliminate a wet spot or an inconvenient wet spot in a field that makes it difficult to farm, you know, to get around or whatever. So those types of things, I think, you know, are utilized more for a convenience thing to make a field more machinery friendly. Diana, you probably agree with that. I think, you know, but there are some places in the area where they would put in systematic tile drainage, you know, on large acreage. The 4 R's. Both my son and I, Matthew and myself, are certified crop advisor, and we maintain that for our consulting business where we help other farms put together these programs like Diana was talking about, nutrient management plans and things like that. But I'm for our certified through the American Society of Agronomy, which again is that the right source. What are we using for plant foods? Are we using manures? Are we using cover crop residues? Are we using commercial fertilizers? So we're making sure we're using the right source, the right rate. We're putting those things on, the field at the right rate, at the right time, in the right place. And a lot of what we do in conservation tillage and what we do on our own farm here in Kinderhook Creek Farm is putting on nutrients at the right time is way more important sometimes than trying to, get it down to the exact pound per acre. I mean, we can break up some of those nutrient applications so that they're very specific in timing. Take some equipment, take some know-how, take some technology. I think the other thing about anything when we look at where we are in our general farming practices here in this watershed, the Tom Hannock watershed, is the word sustainability. And I really emphasize to people that it is not sustainable unless it is profitable. And I cannot tell you how important it is for the next generation. My two sons are not interested in farming for the sake of farming and getting a lot of work done on and working long hours, hard work, and low pay. Not interested. The technology is important to them. We have GPS guidance tractors. We have auto steer equipment. We have yield, guidance yield monitors. I mean, what gets my two boys up in the morning is the excitement about the technology. Do we use pesticides? Absolutely. Do we use them judiciously? Absolutely. We use integrated pest management and those types of things. So looking forward with watershed and farm and land sustainability, a lot of it is going to hinge on what the next generation wants to do in agriculture. And I contend that the greatest crop that we and the farms in the area have ever produced is our children. And if they're here to continue these practices and do better and better at water quality and maintaining the sustainability of our environment and our business, then we're doing the right thing. If we're not sustainable in business and we're not sustainable in environment, it ain't gonna work. So I do thank you very much for letting me throw my 2 cents worth in, and I really, and I see Mike Durack as one of the people I rent land from. We rent pasture land from Mike and his family, and they're right next door to us, and we are very thankful for everyone that allows us to use their land and for our cropping purposes. So again, I'll take any questions, but I think we're going to hold up till the end.
Great. Thank you, Larry. That was terrific.
Thank you.
That was
Thanks,
terrific.
Larry.
I learned so much.
I made it in the 10 minutes too.
So Diana, 2 things for you. First is a question from Tom Carroll. And he's asking, are there resources for site assessments for landowners with stream bank erosion concerns? And I guess that question can go to anyone, but I'll ask you first, Diana, if that's something that NRCS does.
We do some of that. I'm actually gonna refer probably the Rensselaer County Soil and Water Conservation District, which is led by Nick Halford and also as Megan Myers. We're in the same office with the Soil and Water District. The way that NRCS and the Soil and Water District are set up is that NRCS is really the federal side. We have certain federal marching orders. They actually created a local county soil and water district to be more of a local contact to address local needs. So we actually work together really closely on a lot of things. So yes, long answer is yes, there are either NRCS staff or soil and water staff who are typically available to do those types of site visits.
Super. So Tom, if you go to the website, which Jim posted on the chat, tomaticruralland.org, in the resources page, you'll see Megan Meyer's contact information there. So you can get in touch with her and kind of start that ball rolling. And back to you, Diana, for one other thing.
Yep.
At last week's, some folks who are, some of our speakers joined us last week too, when we had a residential section.
Yes.
And I just wanted to kind of, Dick Gibbs is here again. And if you could just, for just a minute, kind of talk about forest management woodlot, kind of concerns for growers, because obviously, farmers often have, woodlots, and we'd love just a little bit about what you do for that. And we'll have Dick say a few words about his experience with the program. So
Yes.
Diana, first you, and then Dick.
Yes, thanks, John. So yes, so this is kind of the flip side of what I do. Not only do we work with active agricultural producers, but we also work with forest landowners. And so one of the programs that we offer is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And through that, we actually have a forest land initiative. And there's two primary options there. One is through NRCS, you can receive funding to then go and hire a private forester that NRCS has vetted, and have that forester develop a site-specific forest management plan for your forest land. And then from there, once you have a forest management plan or forest stewardship plan in hand, you can then apply for conservation practices to be installed on your forest land. And some similar practices, but so I listed below, forest stand improvement is really a vital and critical practice for forest land. Not only does it improve forest health and productivity for your, real log production, but just like a healthy crop field, a healthy forest is also good to your soil and water. So it can improve your surface and groundwater quality. Doing proper forest stand improvements can also improve your stream buffers. It can improve wildlife habitat. It can reduce damage from pests. And as we're getting into new stages, it can also help to increase or maintain carbon storage. So as John said, Dick Gibbs, who is a landowner on the Rensselaer Plateau, has participated in some of these programs. So he's going to talk a little bit about his experience with getting a forest management plan developed. Go ahead, Dick, whenever you're ready. Oh, you're on mute still.
There we go. Can everybody hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
The real benefit of getting involved with a forest management plan is you're really investing in your long-term forest. So a lot of people look at their woodlot as something that now and then gives them something they can use, like logs to sell or firewood or something of monetary value. So it's very hard for a lot of small woodlot owners to think of spending money to improve their woodlot. But in effect, that is what you must do if your woodlot is growing a crop of trees that you want to make better. It's not a lot different than being a master gardener or like Larry Eckhart growing good crops on the soil. So we applied for a forest management plan grant, and we received that grant through Diana's office, and we hired our own forester. And some of the benefits So what happens is the forester writes us a document, many pages long with all kinds of charts and graphs in it, but it starts to put technical numbers on our forest and our woodlot that help us make long-term decisions so that we don't, should we have a log cut this year? Should we harvest trees this year? No. How many trees should we have per acre? How many square feet of growing tree material do we have in our woods? And the forester comes in and looks at things like, we have about 50, 70 acres, and she divides it into 2 or 3 different compartments or stands. Some of them have different mixes of hardwoods and softwoods. Some of them are younger and older. And so it's a real benefit to have a forest management plan just for your own personal knowledge about what to do next, so that you're not just guessing and going out with a chainsaw and cutting some things down. You have a plan. You don't have to stick totally to it, but it really helps a lot. And if we were going to then harvest a bunch of logs and are we trying to monetize our forest, or are we just trying to enjoy it? Or are we trying to heat from it? All of those things can be covered in the plan that was made. It's 15, 20 pages long, and we only have 70 acres of woods. But every stand is identified for different reasons: soil, water, and all the aspects that we've been talking about. So I would highly recommend anybody who doesn't have a forest management plan to get involved and try to get yourself a forest management plan. A couple of things I would add are, it took me 5 days and a trip out to the western part of the state to become at least a master forest owner. The hat that you get from that doesn't say you're a master forest owner. It says you went to the program. So it's kind of a joke that there's so much to learn, because a forest is like 100-year cycle of operations, maybe 150, maybe 200. Well, my life is only 70 some years, and maybe I only got 15 left. It's important to start thinking in longer terms of cycle for the life cycle of the forest. And most of us are not experienced in thinking on that time scale, those long time scales. And getting a forest management plan helps do that, helps you think in longer cycles. And so the MFO program is free, and it's coordinated through the cooperative extension. And if you get and you sign up for a visit, a free visit from a volunteer, not a forester, but somebody who might be your first step for a walk through your woods, that would say, you know, you got some nice trees here, but you got a lot of junk trees here too, and help you start thinking in a technical way about how to deal with your forest. And then you might move on from there to get a forester. So the MFO program is valuable if you're just dipping your toe in the first time in owning a woodlot and trying to care for it for the long term, beyond your own lifetime. What should you think about? Another program, and we can talk about that. A lot of that comes through the New York Forest Owners Association. I see Tracy Laminek's name on here. So is the game of logging. And NIFOA has helped a lot with bringing that program to landowners. Because one of the things you get going on to as you start learning about your woods, you're out there every day and you say, you know what, we need to prune and edit some of these trees. Well, then you got to have a chainsaw and maybe a tractor, and pretty soon you think you know what you're doing because you know how to start it. But you really need game of logging training for safe, because you're really in the middle of the woods with trees that are weighing tons, and you're cutting them down, and where are they going to fall? A lot of accident, very dangerous operation. And so you should try either through ASA or RPA through other locations, get the game of logging and take the beginner course. Even the beginner course, after you take that 1-day course, when you come home, you'll be different. You will not be the same because it's pretty serious training. It's all made out for 1 day. And if you're going to really engage with your own woodlot and try to be active in it and manage it and love it and spend money on it, you really want to have that game of logging. There's 4 different levels of training. So you can get level 1, 2, 3, or 4 that cover different things. And I would highly recommend the game of logging. There's several different people on this call that you could talk to get help with that. I don't know what else I could say. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody thinks I might be able to help with.
Thanks,
Okay,
Dick.
thank you, Dick. Any questions for Dick from anyone on the call? Or I guess Diana too, about the forest management planning.
I'll just add one thing, that the other real nice thing about the program is you can have a forest management plan developed, but it doesn't commit you to necessarily have to invest in all of those recommended practices. So like Dick said, it's a great way to start and really give you a lot of information, gives you time with a forester. Because I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not a forester. So, you know, it's different ways to think about how to really get a healthy forest or get your land moving in a healthy forest direction. And I'll just give Dick a plug that, you know, landowners like Dick are the reason that our programs are successful, because they're committed to their land. So thanks, Dick.
Super. So I want to thank Diana and Larry and Dick, all of you for that. You guys are all super, and I keep saying I'm learning tons here. So I really appreciate it. I know we've kind of gone beyond time, but we have 2 more speakers left, and they got, you know, great stuff to share. So I'm going to quickly move right on to Anna Palmer, who's going to talk about trees for tribs. I think Diana spoke about streamside buffers before and vegetating them, and Anna has some resources to help you to do that. So Anna, take it away.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Jim, for having me again. Let's see if I can get this going. Can you see it in the proper framing?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. My name is Anna Palmer. I am the stream buffer educator working for the Hudson Estuary Trees for Tributaries program. I'm located out of the Region 3 headquarters in New Paltz. And I'm going to just talk about our program a little bit and then offer some additional online resources for getting information that I think are very useful. So the Hudson Estuary Trees for Tribs program was started in 2007, and we offer free native trees and shrubs to people within this focus area. So you'll notice that the map is a little bit different. My supervisor looked over the presentation from last week and wanted to clarify that we cover all of Rockland County, and then it ends at the Rensselaer border because we have to be within New York State. But we are super happy to work with anybody that is within this watershed, and please feel free to reach out to us if you're outside of the watershed and want more buffer restoration resources. In Rensselaer County, we have supported 8 plantings at 6 different locations. And yeah, this is the Tumhannock Reservoir. So even though it is the drinking water supply for Troy, I found out looking at the watersheds, that's actually pretty interesting. But this is the Cherry Plain State Park one, which is it's on that farther east border of that map above. And this planting is only 30 feet wide. So our bare minimum for doing a planting is 60 plants, but we've done plantings as big as 1,000 or more. So we have a pretty wide range, and the program is really designed to quickly turn around getting these plantings done. We get the application and we plant the trees and shrubs like a few months later. We go out and we do a site assessment, and we work with the landowner to pick different species that meet their needs, which is also a useful thing. Some of them are like cherry or plum, so if you're a farmer, they could be useful, as well as do all the other functions of a buffer. This is a picture that I took a few months ago of a farm right alongside an electrical fence on a paddock, and this was only planted a couple years ago, but you can see that the tree tubes, or that the plants are already starting to pop out of these 5-foot tree tubes, which we also provide. So yeah, if you're in that lower Rensselaer County boundary, our application deadline is March 1st. We do 2 planting seasons a year. The application is linked there. Also, I found out that the statewide Trees for Trips program is kind of on hold right now, the one out of Albany, but anybody in New York State who has streamside property can apply for Buffer in a Bag, which uses the same seed stock that we do from Saratoga. And yeah, we have lots of resources about stream riparian buffer restoration. So please feel free to reach out if you're interested in doing a buffer planting. And then the last link that I did was for the DEC grants that our office provides. So some, I don't think that there's currently an RFP out, but I know that John definitely knows about the different DEC grants. A lot of them are for watershed planning and different non-point source pollution stuff, including ag things. So here are the few resources that I wanted to go over really quickly. So the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper is hosted by the DEC, and it basically is just this way to get all of the information that the DEC is constantly collecting available to the public. So I went up and I zoomed into the Tom Hannock Reservoir, and the reason why it is yellow is because it is potentially threatened by different pathogens. So you can click on the reservoir, then a fact sheet will pop up, a link to a fact sheet, and then that has 2 full pages of information about the sampling, what they found, how they did it, when they did it, where they did it, and a lot of really useful information if you're trying to learn more about your watershed. And then this bottom one is from the DEC info locator, and that is all of these different permits and regulation sites. So you can click on it and see the most up-to-date information. And yeah, this is another one that you can click on different streams and see if they're protected streams, or if someone has done a sampling close by, you could see what they found. So that's great. And another resource that I think is awesome is the Hudson River Watershed Alliance. So the map on the left, this is the entire Hudson River watershed. So the first map that I showed was the estuarine portion of the watershed, but this is the watershed for the whole Hudson River that includes the Mohawk River. And that's the area that the Hudson River Watershed Alliance serves. So when you go to their website, you can see that they have lots of different resources. They have a regular breakfast series, like tomorrow there's someone, they have new experts that come and talk about different things. And then another resource that they recently compiled was this Work on Watersheds report, which basically synthesizes the work of 32 watershed groups in this study region. And what did they do? They do watershed management planning, and a link to the document that they did so that different groups can work together and build on what other people have already done. And when I was doing that, I found the Upper Hudson Watershed Coalition's report that was just published in March of 2020, and it includes the Tom Hannock Reservoir, and it talks about the Soil and Water Conservation District and the work that they're doing, and it prioritizes different areas for improvement. So I thought that that was a really interesting thing to find, that if you're trying to get involved in improving your local watersheds, that this could be a good way of getting connected to people within your community that are also doing the same thing. And then the last mapping tool is the watershed mapping tool. So we're all in a watershed, right? It's interesting to see what's going on within your watershed. So this is an awesome, the images below are coming from this website, modelmywatershed.org. Or I always search Wiki Watershed, it like comes up more easily for me. But you can click on any place and then press Model My Watershed, and it'll give you all of this really interesting information that they've compiled. So the first thing that I was looking at was what percentage of land, what is the land cover type for the watershed that is highlighted in that map. So you can see that it's like 28% deciduous forest, but then a close second, 27% pasture and hay. It also tells you how much livestock there is, the number of different types of animals. This is the soil function. So the fact that in that watershed, a large majority of it is very slow infiltration or slow infiltration, it kind of shows that, you know, in the event, in a big rain event, a lot of that is getting washed into our waterways. You could also see, you can like create a model where you increase the amount of rain and you'll see how much of it will be infiltrated within that land area based on the different data that they collected. So that's really interesting. And then the last one is this stream network statistics. So that's the first thing that usually pops up, and it tells you how much of the stream network is these headwater or first order streams, second order, third order, and beyond. And then another thing that comes up at the bottom of that page, which I couldn't fit in the screenshot, is the number of miles that are located in ag land and the number of miles that aren't. So in this watershed, it said that there were 6 miles in ag and 42 miles that weren't. So I just think that, you know, having access to information is always super just empowering to know that you can get all of this information just freely available. And yeah, please reach out if you have any more questions. Thank you so much for having me these 2 sessions.
Well, thank you, Anna. That was just tons of stuff and terrific, and a nice pitch. When you showed the Tamhannock Reservoir, that's where we're acquiring land as part of this program. Okay, so so thank you. That was a better map than we have. So that was super. Any questions for Anna? Okay, thank you, Anna. We so appreciate that. And we will move on to our last speaker. Christopher Williams from PRISM is going to speak about invasive species and water quality. So Christopher, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Were you able to share my screen?
No, we'll need you to share it if you can.
That's right, but you gave me permission. All right, let me make this work. Oh dear. Why isn't it coming up? One moment.
Sure.
I'm just having trouble getting a little button to show up to share screen. There it is. All right. Yeah. Hello, and thank you for having me tonight. I'll try to be really conscious of the time. I know it's getting late. I'm assuming you can all see my screen now. I'm Chris Williams.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. I'm with the Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management of the Capital Region. Our host is the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Saratoga County. We cover 11 counties in the Capital Region. Rensselaer is one of them, and we're funded by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. We are basically charged with coordinating partner efforts, recruiting citizen scientists. We deliver education and outreach, and a component of that would be for our ag people on the call in tonight, that if you have an invasive species and you're not sure what to do, we're your resource. You want to call our office. We can give you the best management practices and the most up-to-date integrated pest management approaches. We are responsible for implementing direct eradications and control efforts. And we do have funding that we provide to constituents or partners. We just recently released our announcement for request for funding. It has to be tied to invasive species work, and there's a lot of other qualifications there, but you can access our website if you're interested in doing that. So invasive species are harmful to the environment. They're the second cause to extinction and habitat loss next to humans. They definitely can be harmful to humans, and they do greatly affect our livestock and our food supply. When we're talking about our hydrologic regimes, when we see environments that are overrun with invasive species, it can impact water quality. Tonight I heard, a lot about cover crops, healthy forests. All of these things play a role. When our environment is being used correctly and we're good stewards of our land, the landscape can be healthy. And if left unchecked and not doing these things, there can be problems that do occur. So invasive species are moving north in our latitudes with climate warming. When you go further south, you see their evidence of them is much more prevalent. There's more species, there's more abundant, and you can see the poor forest and ecology. The health is just not quite right. And the number one takeaway tonight for anybody here in the ag world is do not disturb.
Oh, we lost you. Christopher? Technical glitch?
I think he dropped right out, John.
Oh,
See if he comes back.
give him a minute to come back. Well, while we're waiting, did anyone have questions that they didn't get to ask before to some of our other speakers?
I'll just mention, John, that my contact info, I'm sharing my presentation with John, and he's going to post that on the website. So if anyone needs my contact info, because I didn't show it during my presentation.
Super. Thank you, Diana. Well, I guess I'm a bit at a loss at the moment.
Do you have a phone number for Christopher that you could call him?
Yes, I will give him a call.
My computer, sorry about that, completely it will not turn back on. So I'm sorry, my apologies. I'll just speak from, from my brain here, and I'll be quick. Again, my apologies.
That's okay, Christopher. There's always some technical issue on one of these.
I've had 8 months of Zoom calls. This is the first one that blew up on me. But I do want to share with people on the call that not to disturb your soils, or if you are disturbing them, do not leave them unattended. Cover crops are really important, or restoring the landscape. We often see vectors of human inclusion, basically introductions of invasive species that are harmful to our environment are brought in by humans. Sometimes you can have like equipment that's brought into your property, and if it's coming from a place where there have been invasive species presence from a seed bank, they can be tracked in on the tires of trucks, on the tracks of tractors and heavy equipment. And so we often see that these invasive species are brought in and introduced by humans. And we do encourage people to use a practice where they clean their equipment before it leaves a site and before it enters a site. Other things to consider. What do you do if you have an infestation and you recognize that it's a problem, like honeysuckle or Japanese knotweed or Japanese knapweed, which is a common agricultural pest? You can always contact our office. I'm a certified pesticide instructor. I have my technician's license. Some of the ag people on the call here might be familiar with the Cornell pesticide manuals for resources, and I can always get that information to you on how to treat and take care of some of these problems. One species, when you treat an invasion, what you do to that is not the same for another. All invasive species have to be treated differently because they have different problems or characteristics. And some of these plants can have roots that fragment, or parts of the plant itself can fragment and they can grow new roots. And when you don't dispose of them properly, it can lead to infestations occurring or making the problem even worse. Something else to consider for treatment invasives, that if you treat them at the wrong time, you could actually make the situation worse. Sometimes people think the answer is cutting when that's not the situation. You'll actually stimulate enzymes in the roots and you can have suckering occurring. Any of the foresters on here know that, like, when you cut a beech tree, they will sucker and you'll have hundreds of beech whips everywhere. And the same's for a lot of the invasive species. When they have well-developed root systems, it's not the above ground biomass that you want to attack, it's what's below the ground. And sometimes we do the integrated pest management approach, small, discrete populations. You know, if you have farm equipment, you can usually dig them up and solarize them or dispose of them properly. And if you don't know, you can contact our office. But when it comes to chemical treatments, and I know some of the folks on the agricultural side, our farmers are often certified applicators. And so the timing of doing treatments is important also. You want to make sure that any chemicals that you use actually get taken into the plant systemically, so you kill it at the root, and thus taking care of the problems. So again, we're with the Capital Region PRISM. My office here is here to help assist. We do a lot of consulting for private landowners. We do come to site visits occasionally. We do give our recommendations, and we try to coordinate them with other folks when there's larger problems, and provide resources when we can. So a couple other things that I'm trying to remember. When you have something on your property and it doesn't look right and you're not sure, you know, give us a call. You can always send a picture. You can always give us an email. I take a lot of phone calls. People text stuff like, Chris, can you tell me what this is? I think this is a problem. And then they get the general alerts and then they know what to do. And it's rather important that you at least try to stay in touch with folks that handle invasive species. A couple of things that come to mind that aren't so much of a threat yet to our water, but you know, there's a spotted lanternfly that's coming up through the Hudson Valley, and it will be here. And when it is on your property, you're going to want to know how to respond to it. This invasive tree hopper is basically a sap feeder. It leaves honeydew everywhere. It likes to feed on, you know, crops, basically your stone fruits. And it has a secondary problem that it also produces that honeydew, which then causes sooty mold. And that renders biomass vegetation crops useless. In addition to that, we're getting reports that when the sooty mold from these insects is so predominant and it's everywhere, that there's no regeneration of native vegetation in the forest floor and the shrubs. So my last note I'll leave you with, since I lost a little time, agricultural fields are notorious when they're retired for becoming invasive species breeding grounds, because sometimes there's already some invasives there. They've been kept in check over years by the farmers, but once retired, we see that these plants do spread quite readily. And the key is controlling populations when they're small and identifying them and taking care of them when you can. So again, I'm with the Capital Region PRISM out of Saratoga County Extension Office. Reach out to me anytime. On the other side, I did provide, I think it was John, it might've been Jim last week, which I was gonna show today, a couple resources with vegetative buffers. Blue Niles from the Stormwater Department in the Saratoga County, some of folks here might know who he is. We collaborated with him a little bit to put together a streamside buffer guide. And we thoroughly vetted like the native species plantings. We also looked really carefully at the natives that are there and make sure that that list was up to date. And in that streamside buffer guide, there is some really nice, I would say it's a little bit more comprehensive. I'm sure Anna and other people on the phone have great resources too. But it's just another tool, and it gives really good information about how to kind of lessen that green grass that goes right down to the stream or right down to the lake, and creating these vegetative buffers. And we know when there's more plants that are native and there's greater diversity, it's harder for invasives to take over. And we have healthy forests. We have healthy shrubs, shrublands. We have healthy streams. So thank you very much. Reach out to me anytime. And if there's any quick questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And thank you for pausing while I was fumbling through my phone in desperation to get Zoom to work on my phone.
Well, thanks, Chris. And thanks for sticking with it. Okay. Any questions for Chris before we close? Oh, and I see there's a message from Anna about spotted lanternfly resources there. So look to that. We'll make sure that we put that on the website as well.
Yeah, it's in Harriman and down at Port Jarvis too. It's coming up quick.
Okay. All right. Not seeing any more questions. I want to thank all of you for attending, and I want to thank all of our speakers for their really excellent information. As I said, this is my third time. I've learned tons here, and I hope other folks have as well. Jim or Dan, you want to say a closing word or two?
Sure. Yeah, thanks everybody again for attending, and what a great group of presenters. And I would just like to thank John for assembling this very diverse and excellent group of presenters for tonight's workshop. So thanks, John. And I will just also mention that the recording of this will be on the website. And if any of you want to see Christopher's full presentation that he did for the residential workshop last week, you can find that recording up on the website too. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Dan, anything from you? I guess not. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
John, I was just gonna offer Chris Kraling is here on the workshop. Chris, do you want to jump on and say anything?
Oh, sure. I think my audio kind of died on me when I first joined, but no, great job tonight to everybody. Very informative, and yeah, it was just a fantastic presentation. Thanks.
Okay. Good night, everyone. And as I said, go to the www.Tomhannock Rural Land for these presentations on the resource page. And again, make the pitch for those of you who have an interest in protecting their land. That's why we're here, and we'd love to talk to you. And our contact information is there as well. So good night to all, and happy holidays, and be safe and well.
Thank you.